Swag is nice, but if you're going to do swag, do it right. Don't go to some third party and just print junk. Like, have people be a reflection of your practice, your hospital, your care facility. If it's going to be a hat, make sure it's a New Era. Like, spend more money, make it look, because that you want the top care you want, then you want to offer the top care. Make sure every touch point is as high quality as your service. And I see too many people taking the lazy route and they're checking boxes. And checking boxes is not good, especially when it comes to your health. Okay, because we all have had stuff and you want to go to the best. And you don't want to be in panic mode trying to figure out who it is.
Try to fix the current system or reimagine something new? Will healthcare ever serve consumers just like me and you? The power's in our hands, but every side's gotta come together. We want the newer generations to get something better. Until we flip the script and talk about what gets prevented. Until we see the changes permanent as if we meant it. Until healthcare is finally consumer-centered. We've got a lot to rap about.
Welcome back to the leading podcast about how consumer health works. We spotlight how healthcare is being designed, marketed, and delivered from the consumer point of view, and profile leaders who are championing the move to preventive care. If you want to understand healthcare both as a builder or operator and as a consumer yourself, then this is the place for you. Here's what's going down today. First up, we give a shout out to Zocdoc for becoming Gemini's first partner for health appointments, marking the first time a leading AI platform can connect users directly to real-time bookable care. Then I welcome a panel of marketing leaders to talk about new research on healthcare rebrands. Jennifer Lagemann has compiled the Healthcare Rebrand Index, a report of all healthcare and health tech rebrands from 2020 to 2025, and it's packed full of data. This is the first in a new series of monthly industry panel discussions, and you'll want to hear what this panel has to say after participating in the research. I'm Jared Johnson. Let's get it. Hey family, today we're giving a shout out to Zocdoc for becoming Gemini's first health appointments connected app partner. It marks the first time a leading AI platform can connect users directly to real-time care. Gemini app users can now find and book an appointment that meets their needs with Zocdoc's nationwide network of more than 200,000 providers across 200 specialties and 10,000 insurance plans. The Zocdoc connected app in Gemini allows users to easily find real-time appointment availability and book with a provider without navigating directories or searching multiple sites. This was intriguing because we've been talking a lot on this program about what happens to consumers once a prompt tells them to seek care, and this seems like it'll be the first of many ways that we answer that question. And while we know that this will be a bit of an arms race and others will no doubt follow soon after, it feels significant to be the first partner in this space. As a sneak preview, I'll be speaking with Alex Doyne, Zocdoc's Chief Strategy Officer, on an upcoming episode. He played a key role in this partnership with Gemini and other upcoming partnerships, so stay tuned for that. If you'd like your product or service to be featured in an upcoming shout-out, hit me up on LinkedIn. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in consumer health, and we love highlighting our favorites. All right, let's get into the flow. Today, we're launching a series of monthly industry panels. We're going to be setting up some conversations that we feel like we just need to be talking about. And for this first one, I'm really excited because this was an idea that Jennifer kind of brought to me a little while ago. And what a great way to kind of introduce this series and this new format for us. Those who have been watching and listening here for the last few weeks especially have seen a couple of consumer panels that we've been doing. And those have been speaking to health consumers who are also working in the industry. It's been a great, just kind of dual perspective set of guests that we've had there. So these industry panels are meant to complement those, just where we get to kind of bounce off a little bit more frequently, more regularly, different ideas and different perspectives. So with that, what I want to do is let our guests each introduce themselves briefly, kind of a little bit of, maybe the 2-minute version, who you are, what you do, and then we'll explain kind of the format today because we're talking healthcare rebrands. There's some research that this team has done, and really excited to dig in.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Lagemann. I'm based in Nebraska, and I founded NextJenn Copy, a fractional CMO consulting firm for healthcare and health technology companies. And so one of the projects I did was the Healthcare Rebrand Index, which we'll be going over today. So it's a report documenting over 2,000 rebrands between 2020 and 2025. And I just kind of put together a bunch of trends and things. And so we'll dive into all that. But yeah, my heart and soul is in caregiving and healthcare marketing. I was a family caregiver for 7 years before stepping into the non-medical in-home care world as a caregiver and then scheduler. basically doing everything in an agency except for owning it. So I have like an operational understanding of how things go, but also really love the marketing side. So that's why I do what I do today.
Awesome. My name is Steve Nilsen, but everybody calls me Stix. It's not a term of endearment. I'm just over 6 feet tall and have skinny legs. But anyway, I actually started my career as a snowboard boot developer. But with that, I saw a lot of injuries, including my own. Come from actually a medical family. My late father was a surgeon. My mom's a nurse, and moved on from there to be sports marketing at Red Bull, and then resuscitated the beer brand Pabst Blue Ribbon, and most recently was vice president of Cult Indoctrination at Liquid Death. So I still, it's like family to me, but I'm phasing out and having new projects, and this is one of them. And then when Jennifer gave me a call, it was very intriguing. And coming again with a background in medicine, unfortunately, I've broken myself off a lot. So I've spent time in doctor's offices and emergency rooms, whether it was my parents or not by choice. But here I am, and I appreciate you having me.
Thank you, Stix and Jennifer and Jared. Thanks so much for inviting us all here. I really appreciate it. I'm Steve Schildwachter. I'm the Chief People and Brand Officer for Interim HealthCare. I've spent most of my career actually in franchising, also healthcare, also marketing and organizational growth. From a marketing standpoint, I've helped brands navigate change while staying true to what makes them unique. So one of those brands is Interim HealthCare. It's the nation's oldest home healthcare company. We were founded back in 1966, so marking 60 years this year. And it's a network of locally owned and operated franchise businesses that provide home healthcare, personal care, hospice, and healthcare staffing services across the country. Our model combines the strength of a national healthcare brand, which we'll talk about, with the deep community connections that come from local ownership. And over the past years, Jennifer knows we've undertaken a significant brand refresh. And I'm excited to talk today about what we learned from her healthcare rebrand index research and how those lessons apply to healthcare brands in the marketplace today.
Likewise, yeah. In fact, let's dig into that research. I think I'll turn it over to Jennifer here, kind of let us to drive here for a moment. As you mentioned, right, you've compiled quite a bit of research here. So let's start off and kind of set the stage for the rest of the panel in terms of the research you did, kind of how you designed that, what your goals were, and then we're going to dig into some of the things that have stood out, and also help us understand kind of how Steve and Stix were a part of this.
Yeah. So I was working on a rebrand for a client, and I was just like, it'd be really helpful if I could have like a warehouse of all rebrands in this space, so I could kind of look at them like a swipe file. After much searching, this thing did not exist. So my LinkedIn feed kind of became a rebrand announcement feed. So I was like, I need to take all this information, put it somewhere. So it was a Google spreadsheet is what it started out as. And so I found over 500 on my own just through LinkedIn, Boolean searches on Google, home healthcare news, PR Newswire, just trying to find anything I could. So I tried all the AI tools. I tried Claude. I tried ChatGPT. They could only surface a couple at a time, so it was a consistent thing. So I was like, maybe I should just go put a report together and find out what I can find out about these things. So I did a lot of analyzing of things, and so I put all the brands into one of 14 buckets, like RCM, senior housing, pharmaceutical, all those things. So most brands fit into one of those buckets. And so I put together 12 trends for each that kind of surfaced. And so in the report itself, I put conversation starters rather than examples, and some of them don't fit the trend. They're actually the anti-trend. So there's a lot of like dialogue to be had about, well, what does that mean? So there's a lot of stuff that happened. And the goal was to add editorial and guest content. And so that's what I went to Stix for. And I also added interviews. So I wanted to add some qualitative stuff to the analysis as well. So that's what connected me to Steve. I met with him and Roxanne to discuss their rebrand. And so I did about, I think, 45 interviews with people who led these rebrands, both on the healthcare provider side and on the B2B health tech side. So this report is over 260 pages of analysis. And it became like a how-to and inspiration guide. So you can go into this guide as a startup without a brand, or if you're a more experienced brand, you can just learn from your peers and colleagues and see if there's anything that maybe you missed or parts of the process that you may have skipped and things that you might want to go back and redo as part of a refresh. So that's kind of the impetus of how this report came to be.
Let's dig into a couple of the things that maybe stood out to you, patterns that you saw. You mentioned the 12 trends, maybe a couple of those that stood out above the rest.
Perfect. So one important thing was patient-centeredness and patient-led experiences. That was one of the big themes that emerged from this report, especially from the provider perspective, is the patient and family experience is now a stakeholder as part of the rebrand process. They're not just finding out about the rebrand from a press release, although this is the case sometimes. The ones that did well included the patient and the family and the employees even along in the process, not just to inform them after the fact. One other important one was that most rebrands are refreshes. 32% of the entries I had were refreshes. 8% were actual true rebrands, what you think of in the traditional sense. So that was kind of surprising because I would have assumed it felt a little bit more transformational than not. And so one other thing, I have 2 more points. So Q1 rebrands to me were a bit of a surprise. It's not a surprise in the sense that like you expect to come out the new year, new brand, new name, whatever. It sounds great. But on the back end, that also means a heads down Q4 marketing team in a rebrand, meaning they can't likely spend the normal amount of time that they would during Q4 when sales pressures are high. Most in-house teams can't afford to be heads down in something else other than immediate, lead gen. But the most important thing I'd say that I'll leave you with is the anti-inspiration board. This came up again and again and again in most of the interviews I did. Was brands knew what they didn't want to be more than what they wanted to be. So they knew, who they don't want to copy. And so this came up a lot, especially in the in-home care world. And I know Steve can definitely attest to that. But yeah, a lot of the examples I was talking to, they were citing anti-inspiration rather than having an inspo board ready-made for that.
That's pretty unique about marketing, I guess. The anti-inspiration board. Maybe it's not that unique, but I don't hear a lot of talk about that in other industries. Yeah, Steve, was that the case? Was that something you recalled in terms of like knowing what you didn't want?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say fundamentally, positioning is sacrifice. If you're going to establish a brand positioning, it's important to know not only what you want to do, but what you don't want to do. So I can't say we had an actual anti-inspiration board, although there were some things about the end result that we knew we didn't want to do, but they were essentially things that everybody else in the category does.
Yeah, I'm amazed at the lack. People, this is going to sound harsh. Everybody wants to watch a bar fight, but nobody wants to be in one. And what I mean by that is that you've got to get in the mix if you want to really mix it up. And the way I've gone about brand building is that you got to get dirty. I'm not condoning fighting or anything, but you got to learn to dodge a punch. You got to learn to maybe take one. But too many people talk about this and do it, and they're kind of just taking the lazy route and kind of just glossing it over, trying to do, polish something when you really, in my opinion, if you're really going to do a rebrand, you really have to go down to the studs. And that's the way to look at me, because there's certain aspects, I'm sure of it, of the brand or the company or the facility, but you really, really, are you in or are you out? And some people I'm afraid just have a toe in. And that's the big piece that I'm seeing since I've talked to Jennifer, when I'm looking around a little bit, just as I've gone ahead visits myself. And I'm like, wow, this is not a heavy lift, but it's a commitment. So that's the way I look at it. You got to get in on that. It's my bottom line. I know it's a bad analogy, the bar fight, but you get what I'm saying.
I do get what you're saying. Yeah. And that's the distinction right there for sure. What about some examples, like some of the, I guess, the winners here? Some of the rebrands that went especially well, Jennifer, that you studied. What are some specific ones that you can point to that kind of stand out?
Yeah. So one example I really love to point to, I did a full deep dive in the report, is AWell. They have a very cool website. So it's awellhealth.com. And so they didn't change their logo, but their website is a comic book adjacent experience that walks you through a story with actual villains. And so I often bring up the story brand framework when I'm working with clients, because you are not the hero of the journey, your customer is. And so they really personified this concept on their website, and they really expressed it well from a 360-degree perspective with, like, they have custom Slack emojis, they've got t-shirts, they've got their email signature block, they've got a whole brand booth activation that features this concept. And so they really built a whole brand world to support the work that they're doing. And so that's definitely one that I point to because it's very dramatic and it works for them. They use their website as a sales deck. They don't need a sales deck anymore because their website does the heavy lifting for them. And so that's definitely one example I'd point to, but a couple others that I'd bring up to are Mose. They were Forkira and Metalogix, MIDI Health, Personify Health. They used to be Health Comp and Virgin Pulse. Sturdy Health is a brand based out of Massachusetts that is really cool, as well as Shearwater Health. So those are a couple of examples that I would encourage anybody to check out. And I interviewed all of them except for one in terms of the blogs that I've been putting out lately and pushing out on my LinkedIn. But those are some examples of winners that I'd say, not putting favorites or anything out there, but they are good examples and something I would point and reference people to.
What all did you include in the term rebrand? I mean, clearly visual identity, I would guess is almost always part of that, but like what else do you include or consider part of a rebrand?
Yeah. So in terms of the categories that I kind of mapped out, like a visual update, messaging update, repositioning itself as a concept, M&A was influencing a lot of these. So maybe they pivoted their audience because now they're pursuing their Series B as an example. And so there's a lot of different shapes and forms that these rebrands took. So you might not see a rebrand announcement for every single one of these, and that's by design because some of these may have been like hospital roll-ups where you're buying a couple of smaller hospitals into a bigger system. I try to bifurcate those differently since it's not a net new brand creation. But yeah, there's a lot of different shapes and forms that these rebrands can take for sure.
Jared, if I may, on the difference between rebrand and refresh, I'm glad that Jennifer made that distinction because our case was absolutely a refresh. However, we've been around 60 years. We weren't always known as Interim. We were known as Medical Personnel Pool up until about 35 years ago. We changed the name. We've had franchisees in our system so long that when we came saying we were going to do a brand refresh, one of them we interviewed as part of the process, one of our stakeholders, and he clearly thought we were changing the name again. And we didn't jump in and correct him right away because he was actually giving us really good intelligence on what the brand stood for, why we went to Interim in the first place, and it was actually a very guiding experience. So part of listening sometimes is just shutting up and letting them talk. Of course, we eventually told him what the aim of the project was. It was much more of a refresh than a rebrand. But the lesson from that was just all through our experience on our brand refresh was to listen. So we talked to consumers, we talked to employees of our franchisees, and we talked to our franchisees a lot to really try and understand what we were going to do. And at the beginning of the project, I was darn sure what our direction was going to be on this refresh, and I completely threw out my initial ideas through the listening process. So if you start with strategy before design, which I think was one of the lessons out of the AWell case that Jennifer had, I think that works really importantly. So just you've got to nail that brand positioning before you get to the cosmetics. And the only way for us to get there was to listen to our stakeholders.
Just curious what other lessons stand out along the lines of what Steve was saying of like just even understanding what the difference is between a rebrand and a refresh and putting strategy first.
Well, it's more than just a fresh coat of paint. I guess since Jennifer and I spoke, I've been thinking long and hard because I had a full knee replacement. All right. And that's pretty daunting. I noticed that it took me quite a while to do research on the surgeon I want to do it. I obviously want the best, especially with your mobility. And I'm still super active person. I play hockey. And ironically, the reps for the medical device company one was an NHL player, they're now retired player. And they're like, this is a surgeon you have to go to. And even their waiting room alone, like walking into this orthopedic surgeon, the way with the windows, only given us Colorado, and it's always sunny and everything, but just, it's so much more inviting and it smells nicer and it's so much more welcoming versus I had to go get an MRI and it was like being in a dungeon. And MRIs are not fun if you've ever had one of those. And if you're claustrophobic, good luck. But I had friends, and it crosses over to my friends at Target. And he was explaining to me, corporate, how they're lighting at Target. Like if you've ever walked into Target versus another major box, they do that on purpose. The way their merchandising is, the way their lighting is, they make the experience that much. Is why you walk out of Target when you went there for paper towels and you walk out with a muffler or whatever you have there. You know what I mean? You're bringing them more. But I think that having grown up around doctor's offices and hospitals, that is the one thing that you'll see. What Jennifer and I spoke about is making, because it's high anxiety for some people. Your health is if you haven't had your health, you don't have anything, right? But you've got to make it more welcoming. And I think that in some cases, yeah, fresh coat is fine. And just, a refresh of it is cool. But there's times when you really need to dig in and really have this experience, because that's the first thing people are going to see before they go see the physician, whoever they're going to do. And that you've got to calm them down. There's some nerves there, and they don't know what to expect. And that's the biggest piece I've noticed. And it spills over in all walks of retail or life or whatever in marketing. For me, when I walk in the orthopedic office versus being in a couple of other ones, it was just, again, so much more welcoming, easy. The chairs were comfortable. They were, I don't know, that was just a different experience. That's all I can explain to you. So I'm not saying they did a rebrand, but they stood out. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's keep in mind the experience component of brand. With all of this, I would definitely echo that, and we do talk about that a lot on this show, mostly because of experiences that haven't gone well or could have. To your point, it's not hard to find them in almost any aspect of healthcare. So yeah, let's definitely inject that and keep that in mind as we go through these. Jennifer, I'll come back to you in terms of those are some of the ones that went well. Clearly, we're not naming to name names about ones that went poorly, but like, what made some of these particularly go not as well as you dug into some of the research?
Yeah, I think a lot of the rebrands that I spoke to were first-time rebrands in a long time. And so what that meant was a lot of learnings from their previous. And so the identity was preferences of the founder. Oh, our colors are because these are the founder's favorite color. Our copy is stuff that they thought was snappy and they liked. Using AI to get their minimum viable product across. Other things, putting strategy last. Not keeping your customer at the center. I think a lot of healthcare rebrands may have formerly been for the board or for leadership purposes to show that we're doing something. Here's the thing, rather than here's how we're actually trying to move forward. And so that's kind of like the antithesis of what I was saying when it went well. They included all the stakeholders along the way, got buy-in from everybody. Not that you have to include every piece of feedback or use everything that they tell you, but even just getting them involved in the process makes it that much easier.
Stix, let me turn to you here for a moment, just because I'm intrigued by the one of the comments you made earlier, and I felt like it fell under the thought of challenging the conventional wisdom. That's literally how this podcast started back in 2018. Was we were trying to challenge some conventional wisdom and drop the status quo and all this stuff. And I don't need to bore you with all that, but we kind of have that spirit of like taking it seriously. Like what is helpful to challenge with the status quo, with the conventional wisdom in the industry? What's worth challenging in the conventional wisdom with healthcare brands, I guess? Like where are the parts that it is worth putting some time into?
Yeah. And I don't think it's a heavy lift. I really don't. But the world is in your palm now, right? We're at the speed of now. And one thing I didn't include is I work at the business school at the University of Colorado. This will be my 7th year coming up this fall. And kids, the first thing they do, and it could be a consumer, a kid, a patient, is they're going to look at your website and they're going to look at your socials. And even if they need to update, and Jennifer knows this because it's in their report, but update your visuals. Like make it a little more inviting of the time, because if they see clip art from 1979, that's a big red flag. Like, are you up with the latest technology? Like when I'm getting my full knee, which is basically an amputation of my tibial plateau, they did it via robot. But it was daunting, right? And I must mention, when I mentioned the reps of that, they were out representing at the places they need to be outside of just your typical trade shows, whatever it is. They were going to athletic events. They were going, I'm not saying just set up a tent. Swag is nice, but if you're going to do swag, do it right. Don't go to some third party and just print junk. Like have people be a reflection of your practice, your hospital, your care facility. If it's going to be a hat, make sure it's a New Era. Like spend more money, make it look, because that you want the top care you want, then you want to offer the top care. Make sure every touch point is as high quality as your service. And I see too many people taking the lazy route and they're checking boxes. And checking boxes is not good, especially when it comes to your health. Okay. Because we all have had stuff and you want to go to the best. And you don't want to be in panic mode trying to figure out who it is. Now, we all don't know what's going to happen in the future. But for me, I have a pretty good stable now. And I was taught by my parents, I have really good insurance. Make sure you're covered head to toe. But I know who I need to go to. I have my specialists, I have the people, but it took a while. But a lot of it was word of mouth. But word of mouth is the most valuable marketing in the world. And if you've got kind of a shoddy part to your business, make sure it's all encompassing when you're going to do things. I just see, from my perspective, some of the service providers that I've gone to, their service may be awesome, but the representation, the way it looks to me, looks subpar. And it's a little scary to me. But you also got to be careful. You don't want to be just this dog and pony show and your service isn't as good and you're kind of a smoke and mirrors. So I think you'll win if you connect all that. But anything that has your brand logo on it or your service, make sure it is at the same level of what you're offering. That's it. And then I see just lazy in healthcare, in my opinion.
For healthcare leaders who are considering a rebrand right now, this is on the horizon. They know they need to do it and they haven't just started yet. Where do they start? In fact, what questions should they answer before even starting the process? What's the pre-work that needs to get done even before they take that first step?
Well, this sounds really fundamental, and it's just have a plan and a timetable on what you're going to do it, because you want to understand how ambitious of a refresh or a rebrand are you going to pursue, because it takes some time to get it right. This is something where it's not just measure twice, cut once. It's measure thrice, cut once. You really want to make sure you're going to get it right if you go through that. So you're going to have to lay out kind of what the timetable is, not just to get the work done, but to involve the other stakeholders. Another thing that you need to build into the timetable is research. Whether it's primary research, secondary research, whatever you're going to do, you really have to fundamentally understand who you're trying to reach and for whom this brand, whatever you choose for it to stand for, what it's going to mean to them. Who are those people that you're trying to win over? So you've got to have an idea of that from the beginning. You can't wait till you've created something and then go check it out. That's got to be input at the front. The other thing I would say is allow a little time for the creative process to happen. There was a very famous advertising man that said creativity is a highfalutin word for the work I have to get done by Tuesday. And there's definitely deadlines and things that you have to respect. But I think, build in a little bit of time. Don't try to rush it, because if you get it wrong, you're going to get it really, really wrong.
I think the first thing you really need to do is identify what you're actually trying to do. I think a lot of people don't know what they're doing and they're just like, okay, we need a rebrand, but it's like, why? Not to say that you shouldn't, but you need to understand what your goal is. If let's say your intent is we need more revenue, maybe brand isn't a part of the equation, but you mainly need to go back to your budget or your plan and make a couple of adjustments. Whereas if you're trying to do big organizational transformation, we're bringing in new tech. We want to make sure that our employees are happy. We want to make sure that our employee experience matches our care experience and really just marry everything together, because we're all singing different songs and nobody says the same thing about the company. That is where you want to be starting with the rebrand. It's like, okay, we've got a core operational transformation at our hands. Now we need to make sure that our brand reflects what we're trying to do. And then that kind of launches you into, okay, do we take what we have now and kind of refresh it a little bit? Or do we need to actually throw away everything and start over? And then do all the key stakeholder research, the listening, et cetera. And I did include a kind of a calculator adjacent tool in the report. So you can kind of walk yourself through some exercises about, okay, I think we're a little bit dated. I think that we need to, we're not quite where we need to be with this. And so it's kind of like a score system where you need to do a visual refresh, you need to fully rebrand, or you just need to do a little bit of tweaking here and there. So it's kind of like a calculator, not a perfect tool, but closest I can come to prescribing a solution for people. But I'd say you really need to get back to what exactly it is that you're doing and why.
Sounds so simple.
I know, but crazy.
Right. Any thoughts on that, Stix?
Yeah, you need to listen to the consumer, the patient, the customer, whatever you want to look at. People like to be heard. People like to talk, right? And if you show that you're listening, and you'll add the littlest thing could go a long way, whether it is whether it is in your POS point of sale or your pamphlet or the waiting room, anything about it. I remember, so I have identical twins, aka the Twigs. Someone named them that. I remember they feared going to the dentist. They like freaked out when we'd have to go to the dentist. But the dentist we took them was specialized in children, and they did it right. They had a person dressed up as like a cartoon character walking around, and it just chilled them out, right? And I know we're talking about children dentistry here, but they thought about it. Like, how are we going to make this less? We're going to bring anxiety down. We're going to make it more welcoming. What's something that kids can relate to? How can we do it? And they gave them not the glasses to protect their eyes, but like funny glasses to wear when they were working on their teeth or their nubs at that point. But I think that if you can show that you're listening to your consumer, and also think of the brands that are very successful. Look at walking to an Apple store. There's something very aesthetically pleasing to walk in there. They're very attentive to you. Most people can answer a question. If they can't, they'll find someone that can. They will get you an answer. And I'm not saying every place has to look like an Apple store, but think of when you walk into the brands that have really been successful, part of the experience, it's not even the product itself. It's the experience of getting there. And then obviously the end result is most important when we're talking healthcare, right? But if you can put all those pieces together, you are going to have a line out the door. Simple as that. But you listen to, yeah.
Can I hitchhike onto what you're saying, Stix? It's a great point. I'd say that listening to your audience, I want to revisit that for a second, because what we found in our category is that we're selling something that nobody wants to have to buy. It's like some of our competition advertise on cable TV all the time, call 800 and, find out, get service. Nobody's going to do that. Home health care is something that people resist. If they have an aging parent, they put off those conversations. It was important for us to understand that consumer insight, because if we didn't, we'd think, oh, well, let's just list all of the great things about our brand and go pushing into that. I've had the same experience at 2 other brands. And instead, by realizing, oh, we sell something that they have to get comfortable with or forced into, then our brand positioning became a lot more clear. So that consumer insight is so important.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that back in. And I think that's kind of actually where I'd like to kind of help land this plane here, is give each a chance to talk about how do we do that. Specifically, how do we bring that patient or consumer, in this case, point of view, to be more included, just in general, more prominently in healthcare branding? Because you've mentioned several aspects between the three of you, between incorporating your own experience. And I think that's one of the most worthwhile things. If I had to answer that question, I'd be like, healthcare professionals, doctors, and healthcare administrators can easily be distorted in what they think the experience actually is. They don't even have to call the regular line to get the appointment. They have the back line. Like, they literally have a different experience. And so it's like, can you at least project and pretend that you're the typical, most common person who is undergoing this experience, and put yourself in those shoes when you are making branding decisions. So that would be if I had to answer that, but would love to hear how you each answer that. Like, how do we include that patient or consumer point of view more prominently as we're just going about branding in general?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that marketing can contribute in any organization is to always be that listening post to the consumer, to the patient, to the client. So we try to do that. We try to do regular research and just be able to kind of keep a log of insights as you go through. The more reps that you give yourself across the year, the stronger you're going to be, the readier you're going to be when it comes time for a brand refresh or rebrand.
Yeah. And I also think, it takes legwork. I mean, to get out there, whatever your brand is, or again, your practice, your business, a fish where the fish are, in the way that if it's, let's say, a contact sport, and there could be some orthopedic situation, or it could be whatever, have someone show up at these things and know that, God forbid, there's going to be a crisis, that's the go-to person is. Like, get yourself out there. And too much of it is the traditional route, which is fine. You have to have some of that, because as people get older, they know who they're out, and they're dedicated to that healthcare person. They found their person. But when you've got these younger families coming up, be front of mind with that. Get involved. Maybe it's local school districts, ways to get the word out there that other people have never even bothered to tap into. And you want to become front of mind, but you got to make sure though, it's one thing if you just show someone, you've got to be able to back it up and make it that we know what we're doing. We're trying to be, get our word out there, our name out there, and then people can experience it and have a wonderful experience. You just have to make sure it's out, because once you get them in the door, then you've really got to continue that going. You can't just get them in the door and then it's a bummer experience, in my opinion. But I just don't see enough of that out there. You see some billboards, you see some things, and that's fine. But in the case for me, again, I'm going to go back to my knees, the fact that I end up going to a place where they do a lot of athletes, whatever, and you walk in and you see all the athletes they've worked on, you're in the right place. That it was like, okay, they worked on that. Who's getting paid to do this? Like whatever sport it may be. To me, there isn't enough of going like consumer facing where they're actually interacting with a human being. And there's a lot of automation now. Yes, you have to be careful on what you can say over the phone and they can't give advice. I get that. But if there's a way that someone could call and feel better and knowing they can get in, if it happens over the weekend, next week, and have that, a lot of them have call centers. I get that, but making it much more de-escalate the stress, I think would be huge. I think it would be huge. As a parent that's had injured kids.
All right. Well, I would add that, there's a lot of the in-person experience that we've been talking about, but I think it's also important for us to make sure that we're addressing, the digital front door, since people are doing, AI-based searches or going to ChatGPT and asking health-related questions. And I think the first thing you should be doing too is testing your digital experience. Are you finding yourself online? If you did a cursory Google search for your services, would you show up? Are you in the map pack? Are you showing up in ChatGPT and AI-assisted searches? That's where people are going. Word of mouth, of course, but there are some things that you can do to control, that search experience. And so also on your website, everybody puts up social posts or puts on their website, best doctors, best care. But neither of those things matters if someone can't book an appointment or get a hold of somebody. And so, make sure that all the buttons on your website work. Like, I can't tell you, I've scheduled, I think 2 demos for a client of mine and I got ghosted on both. This is SaaS, but again, it's I'm trying to give you funds, to purchase your services and I can't even get somebody to show me your product. And so think about healthcare. We have a poor experience. We give people, we tell them to book an appointment. We tell them to call. People already have an inherent distrust of healthcare and care-related services. So we're working against the grain, against the conventional wisdom. People are trying to do what they can with their own resources at home. And so now we want them to take an intervention. But are we making sure that we are earning the right to be that intervention for them? And so we owe it to ourselves to make sure that all of our buttons on the website work, that we are easy to find, easy to use, and that we create that experience holistically. And so we can always do surveys or interview customers as well. We can get a feel for how their experience was. You were kind of hard to find, but I love the service. Good to know, but also take note for the experience side. Hey, we need to fix our website or fix our emails because the wrong number, the phone number was a typo. Or something like that, just small little things like that, test your emails, test the links, really basic stuff, but it matters because, if you type in the wrong website or you forgot a letter, that experience has kind of gone away.
Well, I hope this research continues to spark conversations like this one. I hope we do get to hear a lot more of this. Jennifer, I expect there's a way if people are interested in getting their hands on it in some form or another, they can reach out to you? Or is there another way for people who are interested to learn more?
I can give you the link and to add it to the show notes for people to download.
Perfect. We'll do that. So with that, I want to wrap the panel and just say thank you all so much for your contributions, for your insights on this. And we look forward to seeing what comes of more conversations like this one. Steve, Stix, Jennifer, thanks for joining me today.
All right.
Thank you.
So much,
Great
everyone.
seeing you.